indirect taxes and customs within the country, on the frontier, and at the ports. A whole network of Jewish tax farmers and collectors was spread over the entire kingdom. Their chief was a Jewish tax farmer general who acted as the king's treasurer. The wholesale conversion, says Walsh, seemed to have given to this opportunist type of Jew a chance to eat his cake and have it too. He could enjoy all the advantages of going to Mass on Sunday and going to the synagogue on Saturday. His children were barred from no profitable and honorable occupations. They could marry, thanks to his money, into noble impoverished families, as they would do in England, and succeed to the proudest titles in Castile. They could become priests, even bishops. The suspicions fell most heavily on the cultured conversos of the upper class, who benefited most from conversion by gaining access to offices previously off-limits to Jews. The average Christian believed he was ruled by a class of philosophical intellectuals who were nihilists and opportunists with no religious beliefs. Morals deteriorated at the court, and the peasants groaned under their predations. This situation, Walsh says, could not go on indefinitely without an explosion, and unfortunately there were many explosions of the worst possible sort. The mob, seeing the government of Enrique el Impotente, Henry the Impotent, unwilling to do anything to curb the conversos, and virtually handing over to them the conduct of both state and church, took matters into their own hands. In one city after another, just before Queen Isabel came to the throne, the conversos were put to the sword and their houses burned. In 1453, after Constantinople fell to the Turks, the Christians feared a resurgence of Muslim influence in Spain, thwarting the Reconquista. In 1464, large numbers of conversos sailed for Constantinople, where they intended to revert to the religion of their fathers and give aid to the Turk Antichrist, who planned to march on Christian Europe and subdue it as the Moors had subdued Spain in the 8th century. Alfonso ascended the throne of Castile in 1467. When Alfonso entered Toledo in May of that year, open warfare broke out between the Old Christians and the conversos. On July 2nd, a battle raged in Toledo for 3 days, during which 4 streets inhabited exclusively by conversos went up in flames. In 1469, Doña Isabella of Castile married Don Fernando, son of John II of Aragon. Ferdinand and Isabella tried to resolve the civil war that raged throughout Spain. The Jews were initially well disposed to the marriage. The Jews felt that a strong regime that maintained law and order would benefit them, but at least initially, Ferdinand and Isabella proved incapable of ending the civil war. There was also the matter of the Moors, who still occupied southern Spain, and who were suspected of being in league with the Jews. And there were also the recalcitrant nobles, who were a law unto themselves, pillaging and plundering at will. Isabella needed to reimpose law in her kingdom, but she also realized that military conquest was necessary before that could happen. In July 1477, Isabella came to Seville. During her stay, which lasted until October 1478, she was subjected to the sermons of Fray Alonso de Hojeda, the Dominican prior of Seville, who, quote, devoted all his energies to making the crown aware of the danger from Jews and false converts. The reports of Hojeda and the Bishop of Cadiz convinced her nearly all converts were secretly practicing Judaism. Logic dictated that she could not rely on her courts because they were staffed by conversos. Isabella was convinced radical measures were necessary. The only suitable instrument was the Inquisition, a legal body whose judges would be Dominican monks, quote, carefully chosen and beyond the reach of intimidation or bribery. In 1478, she sent a delegation to Pope Sixtus to procure the necessary bull. Less than 2 years later, Muhammad II, head of the newly vitalized Turkish forces in the former capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, ravaged the coast of Apulia in anger after failing to take the island of Rhodes. On August 11, 1480, Muhammad took Otranto and immediately put half the population to the sword. The archbishop and his clergy were slaughtered after being tortured. When the news arrived in Spain in mid-September, the threat of the resurgent Turk convinced Ferdinand and Isabella they could no longer vacillate. The Spanish Inquisition came into existence when Ferdinand and Isabella were dealing with long-standing and seemingly intractable civil war and anarchy. Creation of the Inquisition is an indication they saw Jews and Judaizers as central to both the Muslim problem in the territory yet to be conquered and the problem of anarchy in areas under their control. When the victorious Spanish army marched into Malaga after the successful campaign to drive the Moors from Spain, they found 400 Jews living there. Virtually all were Judaized Christians who had fled the Inquisition from Spain to Granada, where they reverted to Judaism. The apostates were ordered to decide whether they wanted to live completely as Christians or leave the country. Shortly after the royal couple entered Granada, they extended that option to all of Spain's Jews. On March 31, 1492, while still in Granada, Ferdinand and Isabella signed the edict expelling the Jews from the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon. As before, Jews could convert and remain, but the Inquisition had removed much of the incentive to convert. Large numbers chose to leave. Their experience in Granada convinced the monarchs that a total separation was the only solution to the Jewish problem they identified. For some indication of what might have happened in Spain if the situation there had gone unchecked, we need only look at Poland. Jewish influence over Polish political life increased in intensity, fueling Polish imperialism in the east, while weakening Polish rule at home. Polish laws codified Jewish hegemony over large areas of Polish cultural life. Since disobedience to the predations of the Jewish tax farmers was a capital crime, animosity against the Jews was widespread but severely repressed. Cultural drift in Poland led to an explosion of the sort the Inquisition prevented in Spain. As a result, the Polish Republic went into terminal decline, expiring 147 years later. By 1540, the Converso issue was over in Spain. Spain had saved itself by importing the Inquisition from southern France, and then by exporting its problem to the north of Europe. Many of these Jews settled at Antwerp, a natural entrepot on the northern bank of the Scheldt River with easy access to the North Sea. Because of its location at the mouth of the Rhine Delta, Antwerp was the link between European markets and the colonies of the European countries were establishing throughout the world. Antwerp became the center for trade in East Indian spices and Brazilian sugar, and the agents for these firms were, almost without exception, Portuguese conversos, that is, Jews. Indeed, the wealthy trading firms were almost exclusively Portuguese New Christians. Antwerp became the center of a large mercantile network that included Jewish communities in Lyon, Ferrara, Rome, Turin, Venice, and Ancona, and extended to Ragusa, Salonika, and Constantinople in the eastern Mediterranean, and south to Suez and Cairo in Egypt, the line of the overland trade to the Indies. These Jews functioned as a sophisticated spy network that, quote, quietly kept the anti-Spanish, anti-Catholic forces of the world informed as to naval, military, and commercial happenings in the peninsula. The Jews who controlled the spice trade reinvested their profits in the new printing trade, which they quickly used for cultural subversion and psychological warfare by printing Protestant Bibles. The printing business, combined with the intelligence network, gave the Jews and Protestants a significant advantage in the war with Spain. Thus the Jews, in the long run, took their revenge on the country that had cast them out.